I'm Peter Levine, the director of the Defense Management Institute, and we are here today as a part of a planned series of interviews of individuals who have made significant contributions to improving the management of the Department of Defense. Today, we're speaking to the Honorable David Norquist, who served as the 34th Deputy Secretary of Defense from 2019 to 2021 and as DoD Comptroller from 2017 to 2019. Secretary Norquist is currently the President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Defense Industrial Association and a member of the Congressional Commission for the Reform of the Defense Planning, Programming, Budgeting, and Execution System.
Thank you for having me here, Peter. Sure. So Advana, for those who aren't familiar with it, is a data lake, holds billions of transactions, and its origin comes out of the financial statement audit. In order to pass an audit, you have to have transaction level detail. So individually, what you're buying and selling, what you're adding to inventory. Most DoD systems didn't function that way. They would roll up a series of transactions as a block. And when you have that, you can't do any analysis on it because you lose the individual detail. By moving to systems that had transaction level detail for the audit, we now could create this data lake, and using some very sophisticated modern data analytic tools, data visualization tools, you could ask questions and see answers to problems that before were not visible. And originally we started mostly with the financial management community because they were the ones that were part of the audit, they understood it, and they were able to, instead of looking each quarter at a report that said you're 25% of the way through the year, you're 20% obligated out of this account, and go do homework, they could say, forget in summaries, individually, which function, which line in the budget has had no activity in the last 3 months, and what's the story there? So they could do much more sophisticated questions. So that was the original, but the vision that we did was you have a set of data being audited that you can increase the reliability of over time, a powerful tool of data analytics that lets you look at that information at the event level, and then a series of questions and missions that people have in the department whose problems you can solve. So it started in financial management, it spread to acquisition, personnel, joint staff started using it. All of them was, how do I help you answer your questions that used to be data calls? I mean, I remember we used to spend enormous times back when I was in Army intelligence. How many people do we have who speak this particular language? And you do some records call. Well, those sort of things you can just look up, right? And you can get instant answers, which also drives up the accuracy of the data, because when people are using it that way, the owner of the data has to keep it up to date. Part of the thing you can solve with Advana is, I'm bringing your data over and I realize you use O's instead of zeros. I'm going to fix that because I know how to translate that. So they organize it so that it has the information that makes it searchable in a way the original version wasn't. It doesn't change the fact if the original data is missing. And I'll just use an example. When we did the financial statement audit, they went out and visited facilities and they looked at the books and said, if it's on your property book, is it on the base? If it's on the base, is it on the property book? 5% of the buildings in the Navy's property book no longer existed. Over the previous years, they'd been knocked down and removed, but nobody had taken them out of the system. Advana wouldn't see that because it would be looking at the database, but the audit does. And so when you have those flags that says you've got a problem here, the Navy went through and cleaned it up, and the next audit came through and they were 99.9% accuracy. But that's why you need to have somebody going out and poking the data through the audit or through internal means to tell you which systems are reliable, which systems aren't, and what do I need to do to bring them up to standard. DoD, when we started the audit, hadn't had experience with external auditors on a financial statement. They had GAO auditors and IG auditors, but not, here's the steps of a financial statement audit. So there was a whole cultural shift of understanding what that was like. The other thing was the complexity of the volume. Now, the nice thing is commercial audits are used to dealing with sampling. They're used to dealing with volume and trying to do this in a manageable way. So they don't go out and count everything in the Department of Defense, but they pick examples and they go into 100% there. And if they find errors, you, the department, is supposed to know, well, if I have an error of that type here, I should probably go look to see if I have the same thing in other places. Those are the types of changes. The biggest thing for the Department of Defense is our primary focus isn't dollars. Social Security Administration, Treasury, their policies and procedures are all around dispersing and receiving dollars. We have equipment, many times bought without any interest in recording how much the depreciated asset value of it was. The answer is I don't care. I wanted the combat value of it. So the records weren't there. So trying to say, do I even want the old records, or do I just want to say going forward, if I could record the acquisition price, is that enough? Where there were processes in DoD that were never designed to answer a financial statement audit question and aren't necessarily worth the cost to catch them up to that. It's versus going forward. I think the key thing is after you've gotten oriented to your position, decide what the 2 or 3 meaningful changes are you want to have happen while you're there. There's going to be lots of activity. There's going to be lots of times you need to go give speeches, meetings to attend. But if you can't anchor back on these are the 3 things I'm trying to get done, make sure they're vetted so you know the right idea with the vision, that you've got the competent people to lead them, but you're going to have to keep coming back to them and pushing them along for them to be successful. And if you don't have that short list in front of you, and it's got to be short, if you've made it too many things, your time's going to get pulled in every direction. You're going to struggle. So if you keep those 3 in mind, do all the other stuff, but come back to those 3 each week. Did I move these forward? That's the thing that's going to really help you leave a lasting change.